Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the India Cycles for Change online workshop 4, Handling the Handlebar Survey. I am Aditi Subramanian, a research associate for urban development at the Institute of Transportation and Development Policy. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you, senior officials, project management consultants, engineers, community partners, and all other stakeholders who are even watching through YouTube to the fourth workshop of this challenge. Today, we will focus on the findings from the Handlebar surveys in conversation with a few cities and further discuss on how to initiate design and build momentum for cycling. The agenda for today is as follows. Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director of the Smart Cities Mission, will deliver the introductory address. Following that, we will discuss with officials from Kohima, Udaipur, and Ahmedabad on the learnings from their Handlebar surveys. This will be followed by the presentation of the day, How to Initiate Design and Build Momentum for Cycling by Shreya Gadapalli. We will also have a question and answer session. Before we begin, I would just like to highlight a few housekeeping rules for everyone. Participants and panelists, feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the session. Type your questions in the Q&A box. Our team will shortlist these questions for the Q&A session. And finally, if you like a question, please upvote it and bring it to our notice. Now, let me very quickly take you through what cities have been doing for the workshop and for this challenge. Angi, if you could go to the next slide, please. Congratulations, all of you. We have seen phenomenal and diverse engagement by all of the cities through very innovative methods. Cities have used a plethora of ideas to engage with their citizens and to kickstart the revolution towards cycling. 46 cities have rolled out initiatives to engage with their citizens, and the majority have also included users such as women, children, and the elderly as part of all their efforts. Cities such as Kohima, Rajkot, Ujjain, and Pimpri Chinchwad have launched digital apps, conducted cyclothons, and created awareness through Cycle to Work campaigns. Around the country, they've also kickstarted the process to transform their streets. 33 cities, including Gurugram, Mangalore, and Hyderabad, have engaged with their citizens, understood their preferences, and have selected both corridors and neighborhoods for their pilot stretches. Over 371 kilometers of corridors have been selected for the interventions, and 400 and above 400 square kilometers of area of neighborhoods have been selected to become safer for cycling. And then cities have, after identifying these pilot sites, cities have gone on ground to assess the issues that cyclists face. Indore, Kochi, Amritsar, and 30 other cities have conducted a handlebar survey. They've also brought on local citizens, the traffic police, and cyclist groups as part of these surveys. 27 of them have gone on to choose deal breakers that they would first resolve. And as we talk about the great interventions that cities are doing, we would just like to roll out a quick poll to understand how many of you have started cycling after this challenge has been rolled out.
Aditi, we have responses coming in. We'll wait for a few more seconds and.
Sure, Venu. Shall we display the results? It's great that 30% of people cycle regularly, while 43% cycle occasionally, and I'm sure the rest will start. And on this cue, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director of the Smart Cities Mission, to deliver the introductory address. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Aditi, and a very warm welcome to first all the panelists who are there on this panel and also the attendees who are viewing this video conference. And indeed, it's very encouraging to see the poll results first. I thought what is this the fourth in the series, or the probably the fifth conference that video conference that we're trying to do, right? So I was thinking that maybe in order to avoid repetition, I will not talk about how good cycling has been and how good this initiative has been. I think the results are for everyone to see. The poll is one such evidence, and data speaks volumes. And I think even within this small subgroup, and some of us who have been involved with this challenge, and many of us maybe have not been, but still, it's very encouraging to see the numbers. Cities have done a lot of effort, and in fact, this is an area wherein not too much of discussion was taking place. But over the last few days, ever since this challenge was launched, there has been a lot of buzz that has been created around cycling. So, with 45 cities having launched various kind of initiatives to engage the citizens from around the country, we have 15 cities that have launched the open street campaigns for cycle training. Almost 30 cities have conducted handlebar surveys, identified locations to transform for cycling, and over 370 kilometers of corridor and 400 square kilometers of neighborhood areas have been selected for this cycling transformation that we'll be witnessing over the coming days. Heartening to see that cities have undertaken several innovative initiatives. To just name a few, it's about testing of pop-up cycle lanes using paints and barricades has been done in Jabalpur, which has also done pedal to work campaigns along with Bhopal, and cities like Kohima, who will be speaking today, which has led a community-led cycle sharing program and a mobile cycling application that they've launched recently. Several cycle rallies have been undertaken for heritage and tourism by cities like Udaipur, Warangal, Jabalpur, and Udaipur will be speaking about that today. We have PPP initiatives for cycle track implementation done by Gurugram, and cycling photography contests by Itanagar. In fact, we follow a WhatsApp group of our city officials, and almost every day, in fact, every day I'm seeing one photograph of some event taking place in a particular city, be it Saharanpur, be it Jabalpur. So it's indeed very, very heartening and very encouraging to see this kind of contagious energy that is spreading across the country. And it's also good to hear the update that nearly 50 cities have formed their diverse teams, and they are coordinating with the various stakeholders like the cyclist groups and experts to strategize their solutions. So without taking much time, we have three of the cities, Kohima, Udaipur, and Ahmedabad, which who will share their learnings so far in the process of conducting their Handlebar surveys on ground. And of course, it's also heartening to know our joint secretary, in fact, just posted a photograph this weekend of him cycling VRs in the early morning. And that was like leadership from the top. And I think that kind of a catalyst kind of effort and effect that it has, it's definitely going to lead to the transformation that we are all seeking. So, seeing this momentum and excitement from all cities, I would like to urge all cities to create a national movement by launching an open streets campaign for cycling training on 2nd of October, which is Gandhi Jayanti. Because this is also going to be the culmination of the 2 year celebration of 150 years of Mahatma. And in the ministry, we have already issued the advisory to all the smart cities to basically undertake some campaign to commemorate the event. And what better way to do it than by launching an open streets campaign for cycle training, which is in line or in alignment with the Gandhian philosophy. We can't wait to see more such initiatives and participation from all the cities towards creating cycling safe streets and cities. So with that, I would hand over to you, Aditi, to take this forward with the panel discussions that we have scheduled for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for those words. So now let's begin with the most exciting segment of today's workshop, where we're going to be in discussion, in conversation with three cities to discuss how they identified their pilot sites, how they conducted their handlebar survey, and how they're going to initiate the design process. For this, I would like to introduce the moderator and the speaker for the episode, Shreya Gadapalli, South Asia Program Lead, ITDP. Over the last 2 decades, Shreya has guided the planning and design of public transport systems in over half a dozen cities in India. Her areas of expertise include the design of non-motorized transport infrastructure, multimodal integration, parking management, and people and transit-oriented urban planning. Shreya, before I hand it over to you, just a quick reminder to all our panelists, kindly ensure that you present for 8 minutes so that we have ample time for discussions and dialogue to address all the questions the attendees may have. Over to you, Shreya.
Thanks a lot, Aditi. Let me share my screen so that we have the cities on the screen. Just give me a second. Can you see it? Can you see my screen?
It's loading, Shreya.
Okay, maybe one of you could just share the screen and I can take it over.
Sure.
Sure.
So anyway, while we do that, what I do is we have 3 cities today. We have with us Kohima, Udaipur, and Ahmedabad, and we'll start first with Kohima. So may I request the representative from Kohima, I believe it's Atoba, who would make a presentation on behalf of Kohima.
Shreya, I'll just introduce the panelists for today. So
Please.
from Kohima, we have Mr. Atoba, the Technology Officer from Kohima Smart City Development Limited. We have Ms. Apurva Parashar, Deputy Town Planner and Nodal Officer, Udaipur Smart City Limited. And we have Mr. Nitin Sangwan, IAS, CEO, Smart City Ahmedabad Limited.
Sounds good. So over to you, Atoba. We'll have a quick presentation from you. You have 8 minutes. I request you to keep to the time and you can start now.
Hello, yes. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll just proceed by sharing my screen. Is that okay?
Sure, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, so is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
All right. So a very good afternoon to all of you. Respected Director of Smart City Mission, Sri Rahul Kapoor, esteemed members from ITDP, fellow panelists, and participants from different cities. I would like to share warm greetings from Kohima Smart City. Well, it has been quite an interesting and enriching experience for Kohima to have conducted the Handlebar Survey, which was a very new concept to each one of us. So we initiated the survey in collaboration with the local cycling groups, such as the Nagaland Mountain Biking Association, the Trailhound Cycling Club, Native Station, and the traffic personnel. So it took us about 2 weeks to survey in all the 19 wards of Kohima. So as you can see in the slide, the municipal area of Kohima is just about 10 square kilometers, much smaller than other cities in the plains. So it was easier for us to survey the entire municipal roads in just a short span of time. So here are some of the photos captured during the survey. And out of the surveyed locations, we have selected this corridor for the pilot. The reasons for the selection of this corridor are the identified stretch connects 2 major markets in Kohima, the BUC market area in the extreme south and the town area market in the north. And this lies on the central spine of the city's morphology. Besides that, we have 2 multi-level car parking facilities which are coming up under smart city projects. Both lies on the north and the south. Hence, we plan to implement a bicycle rental scheme once they are completed. So the concept is this: people come to the city in their cars, park it in the multi-level car parking facility, and right there we will introduce rental bikes for city commute. So that's the concept of selecting this corridor. We have also identified and marked some of the pain points from the Handlebar survey, as can be seen in this slide, such as heavy traffic, roadside parking, and maybe steep climbs, which might discourage cyclists. We have double parkings happening in most of the stretches and unsafe intersections. So in intersections such as this, we do not have traffic lights, and we do not have, and also there is heavy traffic. So these are some of the pain points which we have identified. Coming to the identification of neighborhood, we have identified one for the pilot, which is just adjacent to the corridor as per the guidelines. And the reason for selecting this neighborhood is because of the fact that citizens from all walks of life gather here for recreational activities like running, cycling, jogging, and the place comes to life, particularly in the evening, with most young people coming together for fitness activities. Having said that, it is pertinent to undertake an urban transformation intervention in this particular heritage circle by providing basic infrastructure like proper lighting, exercise bars, cycle stands with greeneries, which can set a new benchmark towards achieving Kohima's urban transformation objectives. So this is the drone shot which you had taken for the neighborhood. We have identified and marked some of the pain points, and we have also identified 1 or 2 locations for bicycle parking facilities. 2 major deal breakers which we have identified are poor lighting, which makes it extremely unsafe to ride in the evening or at night, and unmanaged traffic and unregulated traffic, overspeeding of cars in the narrow roads. So those are the 2 major deal breakers which Kohima have identified from the Handlebar survey. We've also taken a short analysis from all the surveys that we have conducted, and Kohima have the strength of community participation. It's very safe for women to be on the roads, even in the evening and at night. We have good urban roads and a friendly neighborhood. Some of the weaknesses are like poor street lighting, limited road width for cycle lanes. So Kohima is not like any other metropolitan cities. It's a hill station. The roads are quite narrow to have dedicated cycling infrastructure. And some of the opportunities are large enthusiastic younger
4 minutes
generation.
through.
Hub and spoke cycling trails within and around Kohima for adventure tourism. So Kohima Smart Cities is also exploring ways to promote mountain biking, which is also a part of cycling for adventure tourism. And the threats are like unregulated vehicle traffic, unsafe intersections, double parking, and potholes in some of the interiors of Kohima. These are the plan of action which we hope to take up and discuss and take ideas from ITDP. Some design interventions like traffic calm streets, because cyclists will have to share the roads with the motorists. Community sensitization programs, installation of signages will help to sensitize the community to let them know that cyclists also share the road with the motorists. And some policy interventions like traffic management, this we definitely hope that we get some guidance from ITDP, and we hope to take this forward even in the assembly to come up with traffic management policies. Skill development and enhancement programs will definitely help to upskill the skill level of cyclists so that you'll be able to ride safer and in a more professional manner on the roads. And installation of smart street lights, this will come from the ICCC project of Kohima Smart City to light up the streets, making it safe for cyclists to play on the roads. So that's all about it from Kohima. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Atoba. That was a very nice presentation about what you have done so far under the Handlebar survey and some ideas on how to take things forward. I would like to ask you a question about what do you think would be your principal challenges in now moving from the Handlebar survey towards creating design solutions and implementing them?
One major issue which we would face is for the parking facilities. We have actually two multi-level car parking facilities, which is coming up under the smart city project, but which will be completed only after 2 years. So now to have a traffic management system in place, and given the fact that we have shops all across the roads in Kohima, we really need to take into account the opinions of the stakeholders, of the public, to take certain policy decisions to help manage the traffic and the parking around Kohima.
Sure. So we would later in the session today speak about parking, because parking is quite a vexing issue which many cities are dealing with, and it's critical that we get parking right if we want to get cycling right. So the question I would have next for you, Atoba, is who are the stakeholders? As in you said, you would have to work with the shopkeepers. Who else do you think you need to work with to make sure that you could have a successful parking management system?
Yes, as far as Kohima is concerned, the stakeholders will be the shop owners, first of all, and then the second would be the land owners. So we first of all need to understand the land holding pattern of Kohima. It's not like other cities where the government own the land. The land belongs to the people and the community. So we have to take their opinions into consideration, because we simply just go and, even if it is on the national highway, if there's a landowner nearby, we can't just simply go and put up signages or like remove their parking lots as such. So having said that, I think we definitely need to pull all those stakeholders into one platform and put the idea across to develop cycling lane, or to make cyclists safe on the road.
Sure, sure. And what are your thoughts on making cycling safe? Like, cycling lanes, yes, that's a possibility, but like you mentioned, many of the streets that you have are fairly narrow, and maybe a cycling lane may or may not be possible there. So what are you planning to do there?
Right. As you've mentioned, the road width is quite narrow in Kohima. So at most we can do is community sensitization programs, and to make motorists and the public aware that cyclists also share the road. And as far as Kohima is concerned, it is cycling is a kind of a very new concept, and we're just slowly picking up the trend.
Yeah.
Few years back, even when we started cycling like 5-6 years back, we used to feel shy to be on a cycle on the road. But these days the trends are changing. The youths, they take it as a style, as a lifestyle, and then it has become a style. So in the coming years, if we take up such community sensitization programs and such cycling initiatives, training programs, you know I think that will help a lot to create a cycling environment in Kohima.
Sure, sure. If I were to ask you, what's your goal? What's your ambition? Like you said, that cycling was not a big thing till a few years back. It's only just coming up. Where would you want to see Kohima in 2025?
We are not just targeting the cycling. I mean, like, of course, cycling as a whole. But if you see the terrain of Kohima, it's quite hilly, and we have to take advantage of the topography.
Mhm.
So when it comes to cycling, we have the mountain biking category. So Kohima can come up as the a tourist destination, or like the mountain biking capital of India.
Interesting.
So that's kind of a dream. Of course, we do hope to promote cycling for commute. We do hope to promote cycling for cycling to work, but our main objective would be maybe focus on the mountain biking aspect of cycling,
Mhm.
but promoting cycling as a whole, to engage more with the youth. And we hope to reach out to the schools once the schools open up, and introduce cycling in their curricular activities. So that is our hope and dream for Kohima.
Sure. You did not say anything about terrain earlier, but now that you've mentioned about terrain, and it's interesting that what you're trying to aim for partly is to create an urban mountain biking situation in Kohima, which is quite interesting, as an
Right, exactly. we
right?
also hope to we also hope to incorporate that idea in one of our events during Hornbill.
Yeah.
So let's just hope and pray that the event comes out successful. We'll be soon sharing the idea and banners.
Sure. Are you considering also other means of making cycling somewhat accessible in a mountainous terrain? like some of the ideas are like, having ramps on staircases, which you might have in Kohima. I'm not very aware of the full topography of Kohima, but I've seen hilly cities incorporate many interesting ideas to make cycling accessible.
Right. Most people complain about, the hilly stations and not being able to cycle. But I think the effect of topography on cycling rate is often overblown. And while we would reasonably expect fewer people to cycling in very hill areas, in most places, the topography isn't a large factor as many would believe. For example, even in cities like Switzerland, not a country renowned for its flat plains,
Yeah.
They have higher cycling rates than cities in who have flatter parts of the world. So I think hills aren't an obstacle to cycling much more than they are to walking, and certainly not a reason to fail to design safe and attractive streets for cycling. So the effect of topography on cycling shouldn't be a major issue.
Sounds good.
And just one more point to add there, we have cycles coming with gears and which are specifically built for hilly terrain such as mountain bikes. So hills shouldn't be a problem. I think it's just the attitude that needs to be changed.
That's right. So of course, gears are a good idea. There's also one of the participants today, attendees, who's spoken about pedal assist bicycles. Maybe they could also be brought into a place like Kohima.
Yes, definitely.
Right. So Atoba, we'll come back to you later in the discussion, but now I'd like to shift to Udaipur. And Udaipur is in the exact opposite end of the country, from Kohima in the east to Udaipur in the west. So over to Udaipur to present what their findings have been through the Handlebar survey. And then we'll discuss briefly about Udaipur's findings and what could be done. So may I request the representative from Udaipur, Apurva?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm audible?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy in this unusual time. So I'll start with the presentation. So coming to directly to the presentation. The process of selection of a network and neighborhood for Udaipur for a cycle track. So we wanted a route which should have a citywide connectivity, which should play a very important role in city transportation. So therefore we selected a route from, you can see on the map, from Balicha to Seva Ashram via Surajpur. So as you can see, this stretch lies in the center of the city, and therefore it plays very important role. It actually acts as a main artery of the city. It connects to nearby towns, that is Ahmedabad, main towns, that is Ahmedabad, Chittorgarh. So it is a very important route over here, and it serves maximum numbers of commuters and being used by cyclists also very frequently. So this route also connects major means of transportation, that is bus stand and railway stations. Not only this, but it also contains like military campus, many government and non-government institutions, colleges, universities are on this routes. So it definitely has a potential to cater different categories of users and demography, maybe laborers, women's, children's, and many more. And this stretch is 9.5 kilometers wide, and the available width of the road is around 20 to 22 meters, which is a good enough space, enough width for a plan to be implemented. So for the neighborhood, we chose two neighborhood. Neighborhood 1, that is called as Sector 14. It is actually a largest residential sector of Udaipur. It contains neighborhood schools, colleges, institutions, clinics, commercial sub-centers, etc. So as it is, since it is the largest residential sector, we got a very good citizen support from this site, in this neighborhood. Also, we preferred this route as it is connected to a selected network. So we wanted an end-to-end approach or in circle to promote this. Also, definitely, it has a potential to cater all the categories of users and demography. Also, in the neighborhood 2nd, it is actually a water body. called as Govardhan Sagar. So it served as a major tourist point for both citizens and tourists. People actually used to daily walk and cycle and jogging around the Sagar in the morning and the evening. So coming to the Handlebar Survey, before conducting Handlebar Survey on the ground, we went for various meetings with various stakeholders, traffic police department, citizen representatives, city officials. So on the left side, these are some images we shared while conducting meetings. Also official and non-officials. Parallelly, we also go through the feedback forms. So we approach online method. So we took support of Instagram, Facebook, Twitters, so that we could reach to maximum number of people. We could get maximum numbers of suggestions from the citizen. We also frame WhatsApp message to forward on both officials and non-official groups. It's a major agenda was to reach to the maximum people. We also approached to various schools and colleges so that we could get suggestions from their point of view, from students' point of view, from teachers' point of view. We also prepared a base map for that area so that we could locate the locations of schools and colleges, government institutions, non-government facilities, amenities, local market area. So we conducted Handlebar survey. Right on my right side, these are some images which we shared, which clicked while conducting Handlebar survey. So we came to know about various points, pain points, barriers, and we mapped it on the paper. So this is a stretch. 9.5-kilometer stretch. So we found various pain points such as fast moving traffic, dangerous junctions, blind turns, obstruction by parking, hawkers, and many more. So coming to the specific point, in the first image, as you can see, the road width is good, like it is around 10 to 11 meters. So after carriageway of 7.5 meters, still space is left. And therefore, vehicles move at very high speed over there. So it needs a plan over there so that we can ensure cyclist safety. In the second picture, you can see it is a commercial lane. The carriageway is not that much. It is hardly 8 to 9 meters. Still, vehicles moves at very high speed over there. So on the third image, it is an intersection. So it is an intersection at Suraj Pole. As you can see, the movement of heavy vehicles are there. So that also leads to congestions. Again, raise a question mark for a cyclist.
Ma'am, this is to let you know that 5 minutes are up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So fourth picture is of signal cross junction. So it is controlled for the heavy vehicles, but again need a safety for cyclists. A commercial crowded lane. For this, I can say it is a very common problem for all the Indian cities. Encroachments, obstruction by parking, hawkers. These are very common in the Indian cities. Like in third image, you can see a vending zone is on the left side, and cars are approaching it for the stuff, and they are creating obstructions. We also found few blind turns, bad surface of road at some points of the route. Also, poles and trees are creating obstruction on some point of road. Like along the road, if you are proposing on the proposing left side a cycling route, so it will need a different plan for that area. So for the pain points of a neighborhood, we went for the same process. More or less, we found the same problems. To be specific, like in first picture, this is fast moving vehicles. So the road is width of the road is quite good, and no other activities are going on. Like this is not a commercial loan, but still vehicles move at very high speed. In second picture, you can see it is a unsignaled dangerous junctions. Neighborhood, we don't have much signal junctions, so it needs the regulations of a vehicles. In third point, you can see it is a T junction. Basically, if a cyclist wants to go to the right direction, it will be a very difficult situation because vehicles are moving at high speed. So that again needs a controlling over there. In this neighborhood, a commercial zone is also there. So problems the same. Encroachment activities are going there. In second image, you can see the cars are parked outside the campus, outside the flat campus. For the visitor parking, the cars parking is outside. So again, creating an obstruction on the road. In third picture, against obstruction by hawkers. In this first image, as you all know, Udaipur is a hilly town, but it is confined to merely a walled city. So in this neighborhood, still we found at some places the site is undulating, which again needs a consideration. In fourth pictures, you again trees and poles are obstructing the way. So among these all pain points, we come out with the points of deal breakers, which actually make a situation where it completely avoid cycling on that routes. So dangerous cross junctions, heavy movements of vehicles, commercial activities, we need to regulate them so the parallelly, and last but not the least, unsignaled intersections. So looking forward for the solutions. Thank you.
Thanks for that presentation, Apurva. May I request you to switch on your video so that it will be easy for us to interact?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So great work with the Handlebar survey so far. So the first question that I have for you is, you've chosen 2 neighborhoods for the Handlebar survey and also proposals for change. So what prompted you to take up 2 different neighborhoods?
See, people also want the recreational activities. Nowadays, you can see cycling is not just a work wala thing. It is also a recreational activity. It actually plays an important role in recreation and exercise. So we need to promote more. So we chose a second neighborhood also, just for the sake we could encourage people towards more cycling.
Sure, sure. And so you found certain pain points, some of them which are deal breakers, which make it almost impossible for people to cycle. Now the next phase is to go to design. So what is your plan? Like, do you have some designers with you who have come forward to support you? How are you planning to take it forward?
So we have a team of architects, planners, engineers. We all sit together and we actually work on this. So planning process is under process. So we are focusing on the planning designs. We are looking for the design solution also. So we have a team. Even we have a force of cycle clubs also. So they actually motivate us also. Okay, we need to do this. We need to do this. So we are also looking forward to that. We have also listed out the locations for the parking. We will propose there. So few points were already identified, listed there. So we are also looking forward for the designs of the parking stand so that it could create a environment. We should create such an environment so that people should encourage themselves for cycling.
Sure. So if I were to ask you the top 2 deal breakers that you found in your Handlebar survey, what would they be? Like, what were these points and what were those issues? If you were to address them, you would have solved 50% of the problem.
See, first of all, I think according to me is commercial. Just a second. For me, for us, Udaipur city, like at few point, this road is commercial. So for taking a commercial zone, people are very reluctant to propose anything there. They don't have that mindset over there. They actually private, personal interest they are oriented with. So we need to encourage them. We need to we need to convince them for the infrastructure. That is a major deal breaker point. We need to come out with a very good plan so that we can make them convinced for the infrastructure for cycling. First, maybe I can say for the commercial activities, commercial zone, and second would be maybe intersection. We would like to focus on, because in intersection there is a chance of hitting a cycle by vehicles. So we need to focus on that also.
Sure. So when you say commercial areas and there might be a lot of hesitation, who are these stakeholders? That have you started engagement with these stakeholders? Whether they're shopkeepers, others, to start bringing them into the dialogue, into a dialogue.
Yeah, we have talked to shopkeepers also. We have contacted their parshans, the representative of each of the ward we are proposing where we are proposing the track. So we approach to the Parshad. Parshad will convince local citizens, the union of shopkeepers. So we are in the phase of convincing for the infrastructure.
Sure. And so what are your plans? What are your next plans now? When would you start developing like you said, you already have started developing some designs. When do you plan to take these designs?
We have done a tendering process also. So within few days, it will come to an end, and we'll start with the markings over the street. So as we are getting a good, wherever we are getting a good stretch, we'll start with the points, so that we can encourage and we can spread a good length, or we can stretch over a good length for the cycling. So within few days, we can initiate this process.
Sure. When you say tendering, what exactly are you tendering?
Tendering for the markings, for the paints in the local city, you need to tender such stuff. You can't, a city can't itself make a decision and implement any programs. So it needs the tendering, of course. So we need a tendering for the markings, for the barricades, for the poles, signal poles, for the signages. Yeah.
Sure. Sounds good. So we'll come back to you again, Apurva, and let's move now tracks to Ahmedabad to see what Ahmedabad has done in its own Handlebar survey and what its plans are. So over to you, Ahmedabad.
Good afternoon, all. First of all, let me thank you, Smart City Mission and ITDP, for making Cycle4Change a buzzword across the city. So directly now, I want to share our presentation.
Yes.
Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. So Ahmedabad Smart City, it took time in formulating a core team with our diversity of across the city officials, PMC, knowledge experts, design experts, and also our PBS operators and cycling groups. Due to this core committee, we conducted a Handlebar survey. Yes, and during Handlebar survey, we identified first 5 corridors, and out of these 5 corridors, we have selected 1 corridor as university area for our proposed intervention. Let me drill down into the criteria why we have selected this one. First, we have already 3 cycle tracks across the city, but out of these 3 cycle tracks, university area has a concrete cycle track rather than that Prahlad Nagar cycle track was of paver block. And this university area has cycle track of 2.25 meter width. And also we have less commercial establishment adjacent to this cycle track. So we have around almost continuity to this cycle track. Along these reasons, we have a mixed users like student population because of the university area, LD College, IIM, and also proximity to public transport. We have BRTS, AMTS, and also upcoming metro route in this university area. And also Ahmedabad Smart City is the pioneer in the already Smart City projects. So we have one Ahmedabad Bike project as public bike sharing project. So we have our PBS stations where we have our Yulu and My Bike PBS operators are also there. In road, specific to road, in this corridor, we have, let me tell you, this A to B, B to C, and C to D. So I'll just talk down about A to B, that corridor length. We have 1.4 kilometer corridor length, and in total we have 8.3 kilometer corridor length, and surrounding we have around 2 kilometer square area as neighborhood. In the traffic, environment, and route, all this suggests that the university area is the perfect intervention to go ahead with. And also we have around 5 junctions and 90 junctions. That would be a good lessons for Smart City Ahmedabad to make a design perspective. We have done Handlebar survey 2 times. First in the rainy condition in the morning, and second with the clear cloud condition with our survey team. We have identified some deal breaker points, 5 to 6. Let me go down it. First one is that the existing cycle track is being used by 2-wheelers, not by cyclists. Because there are many instances where broken separators are there, due to which people from 2-wheeler, they are just using this cycle track rather than the main road. In many instances, manholes were raised and also broken, the surface is uneven, due to which the cycling continuity is not being maintained. Third, 2 or 3 premises are there. To giving the access to these premises, they have just put the paver blocks, as you can see in the second picture. So it just blocks our continuity to the cycle track. And I think this is the reason why cyclists are not using this cycle track. So we are thinking to make it lucrative for the cyclist to use this cycle track. T-junctions. In T-junctions also no proper signages are there, and safety concerns are also there. That's why people
This
are
is
using,
to let you know that 4 minutes are up. Thank you.
in some places we have a deposition of soil also, due to which you can see that people are forced to use the footpath rather than cycle track. And at some instances are also the overgrown trees and untrimmed trees are also there, due to which they also need to use this footpath. Yes, the uneven surface. It's a major reason of inconvenience using this cycle track. And it's also a major deal breaker point, according to us. So what we're trying to, these are the major deal breaker points. And what are the intervention we are trying to do this? We want to we want to allocate a specific personnel who will look after all these things to clearing this specific cycle track by repairing potholes, manholes, by pruning of plants, weeding, removal of any structure, this ad hoc construction. Also, we want to install any bollards or tree separators if we can restrict the entry of two-wheelers. We want to increase the signages for the T-junctions. The ultimate objective is the smooth integration of cycle lane with the junctions. We will also change the look and feel of our existing PBS stations adjacent to this cycle track. I think all this is from Smart City Ahmedabad. Open for the questions.
Thanks a lot for that quick presentation on Ahmedabad's case. Now, what you've shown here is to a large extent places which have cycle tracks. Like, for example, the 132 feet ring road has a cycle track. This was along the BRTS corridor. And what you're trying to do is to improve an existing cycle track. And I think that's a great step forward, where a piece of infrastructure that you had created in the past was not working and you're trying to make it work now. By doing through the Handlebar survey, you've identified what the issues are. I would also ask, what are the other interventions that you're looking at of bringing cycling to other parts of the city? Like, you also identified the whole neighborhood, the university neighborhood, if you will. And you mentioned about multiple intersections there and what you might do about those intersections. So do you have any thoughts about how you would go about creating ideas, design solutions for that? That's the first question that I have. And second question that I'd like you to address is, who are the stakeholders that you're planning to engage with to get their buy-in? Like, whose support do you need for this to be a success?
Yes, Shreya, for your first question, our core committee feels that we don't want to just build a cycle track for the leisure activity. Rather than we want to build as a behavioral change and commutation cycling track. For this, we have identified, we think that out of these 3 existing cycle track, if we can refurbish and if we can attract the people to use it as a regular commute rather than leisure, so it would be success for Smart City Ahmedabad. So for that, we have identified, and also in addition to A to B, which is existing cycle track, B2C and C2D, we are currently thinking of the intervention like any pop-up cycle junctions, pop-up cycle lane, cycling junctions, box cycling junctions at some places. And also we want to try to change the signaling behavior. We want to prioritize a signaling behavior for the cyclist also. There are some 3-4 interventions are in lineup for these things. And for the second thing, the stakeholders. As I earlier said, that we have civil society organizations, plus we have design experts. Secondly, we have 2 cycling group, Symbolian and Cycles4Change. They have around 60 to 70% base of active cyclists from Ahmedabad. So we have that good input from there, and they can suggest anything that we can go for the with these interventions.
Sure. Have you had a chance to speak with cyclists on the street themselves? So you mentioned that your goal is not about leisure cycling, but it's about commuter cycling, people who actually go to work on cycles, or students. Have you had a chance to speak with them and find out what their concerns are?
Yes, informally, just we have interacted with adjacent educational institutes, and we have also shot their feedbacks and how we can utilize this cycle track for the benefits for them.
Sure. So you have two very large universities there, right? There's Gujarat University, also CEPT University, which is in that vicinity. Plus lots of other cyclists also who go on the IIM road as well as the 132 feet ring road. So have you had others, like other than students, have you had conversations with other people as well?
Currently, we have not, but we are trying to do that.
Okay. So I'd strongly urge you to consider doing that. One of the questions that I have now for all three of you, which is to you in Ahmedabad, but also to Kohima and to Udaipur, your handlebar surveys seem to have been done all during the daytime. Have you had a chance to do the handlebar survey also at night time? Because the issues at night might be different from the day. So first, maybe you could answer, and then we'll also bring in Atoba as well as Apurva from Udaipur and Kohima to also answer that.
We have not done during night times. We were only just in the wee hours.
Sure. So I would strongly urge that you consider doing the handlebar survey also at night time, because the issues that you might find out are quite different. For example, in Kohima, Atoba had mentioned earlier about lighting being a big issue, and therefore they are considering doing lighting as a big intervention itself to improve cycling. Over to you, Apurva. Have you had done also surveys at night time?
Not at night time, but at evening time. But of course, you're right. We should cycle. We should give a pilot in night also, so
Yes.
that we could understand nighttime issues. We have a proper infrastructure, but still, at the cyclist point of view, we need to think over the issues again for the night.
Sure. The other point that I wanted to just raise quickly is about the mention of bollards. And while bollards seem like a good idea to prevent motorcycles from entering, they also tend to obstruct cyclists. So I just want you to be a little careful about bollards as a design solution and where you would use them and where you would not. So just a word of caution for you to be careful in how you use bollards as a design means.
Sure.
Right. Now I have an interesting question, a format where I would invite each one of you to ask one of your other city colleagues. So Apurva, you can ask either Atoba or Prithviraj a question about what their experience was or what kind of ways they're going forward with.
I would like to ask Atoba a question. They have captured pictures from drone very nicely done, so that we can see the topography changes. So how was it? How was and for a terrain like Kohima, it is very difficult. It is very challenging to introduce cycling to motivate people for the cycling. So how it would be like, and how you are looking forward to it?
Yes, thank you for the question and the time. To promote cycling in Kohima is, an uphill challenge, but we are trying our best, and we have, a lot of active cycling groups coming forward to help us with our campaign. And as a matter of fact, the Cycle to Freedom campaign was a great success for Kohima. Yes, we have collected we're almost nearing 100 stories. So even the kids, the younger generations are coming forward and submitting their cute photos for the Cycle to Freedom challenge. So through social media, we are trying to create an impact. Our social media campaigns are very aggressive. We are very active on Twitter, on Instagram, even on YouTube. We are very active, and our subscriber base is just going up. And we're also currently working on a documentary and a cycling Cycles4Change official video, which is soon to be launched by October. So using these digital platforms and social media campaigns just to show the people that, we can do this cycling in Kohima. Because way back when we started cycling, we never had the opportunity to ride a gear cycle. But if you have a gear cycle, the hills are not an issue. So we want to introduce those kind of ideas to the people, and maybe when the schools open up, we would have interactive sessions. We'd have workshops with them, and then just to show them and then inspire them to take up cycling. Of course, we do consider that not everyone is rich enough to afford a cycle. For that reason, we've also introduced a bicycle rental scheme. For just $100, you can use it for the entire day. So we introduced it just last week, and till next week Wednesday, it's fully booked. So that is the kind of kind of momentum which have introduced, and we hope to carry this forward even in the coming days, even after this competition.
Yeah,
comes.
momentum is very great, very nice to see on the WhatsApp group. Like Kohima is doing really great.
Thank you, thank you.
Atoba, do you have a question for one of your co-panelists today?
Yes, I was very much impressed with I think Prithvi. His presentation was very professional, and then for both of you, mine was kind of I'm not an urban expert, so I just compiled what I had with me, the data. But I was really impressed with the presentation. So I just wanted to know, like, who are in the team, preparing all these presentations, all the technical stuff, the drawings. So I just wanted to know, like, how you guys carry things forward and you know prepare the documents.
Thanks, Atava, for the compliments. So actually, for this all the presentations, we have our consultant also there from PwC, and also the knowledge experts, specifically, and also we have urban designers. Ms. Purvi Bhatt is also there. So we took around 2 to 3 weeks in forming our this expert team, due to which currently we can accelerate our process further in this contest.
Sure. Do you have a question for one of your co-panelists?
Yes.
Or both of them, if you have questions, you're welcome to ask.
To make a justice, I need to ask Ms. Purva.
Yeah.
Just during your slides, I've seen that in some streets are the dense streets, the busy street where many shopkeepers are there and many shops are there. So how would you ensure that the passage to these shops would not obstruct the continuity of cycle track? So is there any design?
Not yet. I'm still looking forward for this particular. Actually, I've pointed out this as a deal breaker. I'm still looking out for the good examples so that we could implement there. We could encourage local people, shopkeepers over there. So we're still working on that because that situation is very challenging. That place is very challenging because road is not that wide enough. Encroachments are there, which is very unavoidable. Like you can't stop people even implementing various policies. You can't easily manage people. So we are still looking for the design solution in this respect. Yeah.
I think Shreya, you have that panacea for this striking question of from all the cities, because it's the need of the hour to make the designs in such a way that continuity could be maintained.
Absolutely. So we certainly there to help you, but I request you three, but also all the cities in the country, to create a design team of local experts, local cycling enthusiasts who might have solutions, and also make sure that you are bringing in the stakeholders into the dialogue, especially ones who might potentially oppose what you're trying to do. For example, if you're Apurva, for you, but also the other two cities that we have here, if shopkeepers are potentially someone whom you are concerned about, I would advise them to take them on a cycle ride on a Sunday morning. Specifically go out, invite them, make them a part of it. Because one of the key things that you learn, especially when you look at cities like European cities, especially Dutch cities, the reason why cycling is safe there is not only because there is safe infrastructure, but also because every car user is also a cyclist. therefore, if you can get those shopkeepers to go on a cycle ride for them to experience what it is like to be on the street with a cycle, they might start appreciating the need for safer cycling environment, and they might actually become your champions. So do consider bringing them in, whoever they are. They might be shopkeepers, they might be local, the corporators or legislators who might be there, who might have concerns about whatever you're trying to do. So make sure that they become a part of your champions, right? So any final questions that you would like us to address, the three of you, in today's presentation or in the future?
Yes.
So you can ask me right now. I may not have an answer for it, but at least we are taking questions.
Yes, as far as Kohima is concerned, as mentioned earlier, we will not be able to come up with a dedicated cycling track as far as the municipal area is concerned. But beyond that, maybe if the government take initiatives, there are spaces. But as far as the smart city plan city is concerned, we will not have we will not have enough space to come up with segregated cycle lanes because it's not a planned city, to be quite honest. But regarding the design interventions and the policy interventions for parking management, we will definitely need expert advisors from ITDP to help us, design those policies.
Sure, sure. Any question from Apurva or Prithvi?
I have a question. We were just thinking out of the box. Like if we propose a cycle track towards the right side towards the divider side, so we could justify the left side problems. Like we have a shops towards the left. We have a slope towards the left, so that creates a problem for a cyclist. Means stormwater is it's actually left side is actually a problematic situation. People move that slow. What if we could provide if we could proposal for a right side approach?
Absolutely. So this is a question that also I see Arjit from Ahmedabad has been putting in the chat box of, can you have median cycle tracks? And the answer is yes, it's possible to have median cycle tracks. And like you rightly mentioned, the left side of a street, the curb side often tends to have a lot of conflicts, right? And therefore, could you do something about it on the right? So while I would say, yes, you can do, and you can try it out. And the best thing about the Cycles for Change is that the whole idea is to test, learn, and then scale. So my suggestion to you is try it out, see how it works, and what the concerns might be, and try to fix those concerns. And if it doesn't work, you would have learned that it doesn't work, right? So the best way to do it is to go ahead and try it. And it doesn't take a whole lot for you to go ahead and try it.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Any question from Ahmedabad, Prithviraj?
Yeah, no.
Okay, cool. We also have some questions from our attendees today. And Aditi, could you bring in some of those questions?
Sure, Shreya, sure. So I think a question that's popped up pretty often, this is from the CEO of Tirunelveli Smart City Limited, Mr. V. Narayan, and he's saying that Tirunelveli is a very old city having narrow roads, and how can cycling infrastructure be designed on those types of roads?
Sure, sure. And we will try to address that question also later in the presentation. And I wouldn't say that there is one fixed answer, but the thing is that yes, in an ideal world, you might want to have dedicated cycle tracks, but we also understand that cycle tracks may or may not be possible everywhere, but making cycling safe is possible everywhere. And I think that's the question. How do you do that? Parking would be a key issue. We will talk about it in my presentation in a few minutes. Second is traffic calming that you want to make sure. And third, ways and means in which you can start reducing the amount of traffic that's there, especially in those areas, through a variety of measures like rerouting and so on and so forth. So that your goal eventually is that people shift to cycling and you don't actually need all that traffic to come in the first place. So it's a trial and error process. And the goal of Cycles for Change is that trial and error process of test, learn, and scale.
Sure, Shreya. So the next question is from a YouTube viewer, Dr. Arul, who's the bicycle mayor of Tirunelveli. So they're proposing corridors that run along schools.
Yeah.
And he's asking if any special precautions need to be taken and if helmets need to be enforced as a compulsory tactic that they take along these school corridors.
So if you see the best of cycling countries in the world actually do not need cycling helmets because your goal is to make cycling safe on the street. And from what we can see from literature, it suggests that if your street is very unsafe, a helmet is not going to protect you. And if a street is safe for cycling, then a helmet may not be needed. So in effect, maybe a helmet is actually not as useful as you consider it to be. So, and it also can become a detractor from cycling because, it becomes an additional botheration for cyclists to start with. What you should consider is how do you make pretty much every inch of the city safe for cycling, whether it is in the form of making speed slower, reducing conflict, especially at intersections, or even in some cases, creating dedicated cycle tracks, especially on some wider, higher traffic, higher speed traffic areas of the city.
Thanks, Shreya. So the next question is by Priyank Shah from Vadodara.
Yeah.
And, like we had discussed earlier, blocking the entry to two-wheelers also sometimes may block out cyclists. But in a country like India, how do we ensure that cycle lanes aren't encroached by two-wheelers? And are there any case studies that you would recommend, for the cities to look up?
We will look up and maybe send some points your way. But the primary point here, again, is that, like Priyank rightly pointed out, it's difficult for you to stop motorcycles to access facilities which are made for cycles because they pretty much are similar. And while you might have certain design solutions, but broadly, they will be able to come on. The principal way in which you can avoid motorcycles from coming onto a cycle track is when the cycle tracks are full of cyclists or the facilities are full of cycles. And that's when a motorist doesn't feel any added value in trying to come through a cycle track to go through. Of course, enforcement has a key role and design alone cannot solve it. So look at enforcement, look at trying to get more and more cyclists so that motorcyclists do not encroach. And lastly, make sure that it's safe for cycles and motorcycles to coexist, which is through design, you can actually slow down the streets to the point where motorcyclists are not as much of a threat to cyclists. And we are still learning in this country. Like the truth is that walking and cycling, despite the fact that 50% or nearly 50% of trips are on foot or on cycle, we've not known enough about how to create cycling facilities which actually work. And this is the opportunity for all of you to test, find out what works and doesn't work, and then scale it.
Sure, Shreya. Thank you. So before we move to the next section for the presentation, we would just like to run a poll to ask all the participants how they felt about the panel discussion.
Sure. Go ahead.
Getting in responses, Shreya, keeping it on for a few more seconds.
Sure, sounds good. In the meantime, let me see if I can share my screen. So that's great. So you're nearly, 90% of you have said that the session was great. And we understand 10% of you thought that it was average, and we look forward to your feedback on how we could make it better. Thanks for that. So with that, shall we go to the next session, Aditi?
Yes, Shreya. Will you present your screen or should we share it?
Let me see if I can share my screen. If it works, then...
Yes, Shreya, it's visible to us.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So let's look at some key takeaways. The first thing is, what is a pain point, right? And we need to remember that a pain point is not an issue. It's an issue at a certain specific point, and that's why it's a pain point. And you might have a variety of pain points, like, you have, say, antisocial activities which are happening in darkness, on dark streets, and that can be dangerous, especially for women. That might be a deal breaker, that pretty much no woman would like to ride on that section of the street, or even men might be, for that matter, quite afraid, or even kids, others, and therefore that might be a deal breaker. Or let's look at the issue of extremely high speeds, where a cyclist might feel very unsafe to be on that street. That might be a deal breaker in a certain case. So now remember that this might be just a pain point in a certain situation if the differential is not very high, but at that particular point, it might be a pain point, or that pain point might become a deal breaker, or, and so on and so forth. But now narrow streets, as in we've seen that some of you have pointed out narrow streets as being a pain point. Now I would say that a narrow street is not a pain point by itself, or narrow streets are not pain points by themselves. The issue instead is maybe it's encroached by parking, or maybe there is high-speed traffic that hinders the movement of cyclists. And what can you do about it? So the solutions would be about how do you address the question of parking? How do you address the question of slowing down traffic to make cyclists and motor vehicles coexist and go safely? So keep this in mind as you do your own handlebar surveys. And like I had requested our panelists today, make sure that you're doing handlebar surveys at different times of the day, in different lighting conditions, with different sets of people, so that you get the inputs of a variety of stakeholders at a variety of times on a variety of locations, so that you're able to quite comprehensively look at what the issues are and start solving them. And again, try to find what solutions you think solutions might work, try them out, see if they work. If they don't work, try out new solutions. One of the points that almost all cities have been raising is the issue of parking, that there is parking and that's a concern for cyclists. So what can we do about it? So let's look at, and this particular picture is from Kohima, but it could be pretty much any city. The parking issue is a super local problem, a very, very localized problem, where parking oftentimes is concentrated in a few specific spots. So you would see double parking happening in a 100-meter section, and right like next to it, about 100 meters down the street, you might actually see no parking there. That's primarily because we're not managing parking, right? So people can park wherever they want, often unorganized and haphazard. Parking oftentimes is angular or perpendicular, which occupies more of the right of way of the street, which is already constrained. And lastly, there might be, and there are in many cases, underutilized off-street parking facilities. And we've looked at multiple cities in India and found that off-street parking locations are underutilized or unused in many cases. So what can we do about it? So let's start looking at what the solution might be. The first is that you need to start demarcating parking. So clearly mark exactly what the slots are and where you can park and where you cannot park, right? And where you can park, make sure that you're marking slots for cars and two-wheelers separately so that they know where they can park. And car parking should be only parallel parking because it occupies less of the right of way. And cycle and two-wheeler parking can be perpendicular, makes sense because they occupy about the same amount of space. What you need is about 2 meters of the right of way where you can or might be okay accommodating a little bit of parking. Also remember that you need to distribute parking, which means that rather than all these vehicles which are parked perpendicular at a certain location or double parked, instead could be parking in some other location as well, a little further down the street. So which means that start marking parking in other places and ways and means to how to spread the amount of parking in different parts so that it's not concentrated in a few spots, which is creating a bottleneck. Third, Make sure that there are also clearly marked spots where there is no parking, because you would not want parking there, because it obstructs either the movement of vehicles and cycles, including cycles, or there are other concerns there, right? So the points are mark, distribute parking, and enforce parking lastly. Now, let's go into how you can actually achieve this. One of the key points here is pricing it right. Unless you put a right price, you may not actually get the right kind of parking. So imagine there's a location on your left that you see on the screen, which has parking at 40 rupees per hour, and another location further down the street, which is at 20 rupees per hour, right? Now, I'd like to ask you a question, and Venu, I'll ask you in a minute to launch the question. But before that, let's look at this. Imagine you are someone, and there's a quiz that's coming your way, a question. Imagine you're someone who has to deliver a package in this area, and your package location is exactly where the red parking zone is, right on the left that you see the red parking zone, the orange-red parking zone that you see. But you have to park only for 30 minutes. You would probably come down even before 30 minutes. And the red parking zone also allows you to park for only half an hour and pay 20 rupees, half the price for half the time. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. Can you launch the poll, Venu, now? Right? So you have come to deliver a package and you need to park for only 30 minutes. Where would you park? In the red zone or the yellow zone? And do remember that in this case, you can park for half the time and pay half the price. If you park only for half an hour, you pay only half the price.
Yeah, we have half the attendees who have responded so far. Others seem a little reluctant.
Okay, so let's go ahead and see what the results are. So we find that even though you can park for only half the price, a majority of you, 75% of you said you might actually park in the 20 per hour location. Already, some of that parking that you see in the red zone has moved to the yellow zone because of the fact that you put a price, a differential price. Now, let's go to a second question. Venu, just hold a moment before I explain the question. The second question is, now imagine you have come to this area for a meeting, right? And you have to park now for 2 hours because your meeting probably is going to go on for about 1.5 to 2 hours. Where would you park? Launch the question, please. So very similar results. And again, the point is that a lot of you are saying you would not probably park in the red zone. You're okay parking in the yellow zone because it's a cheaper price, which means that the localized problem of double parking in the red zone is already starting to resolve itself, right? Now, let's go to the next situation, in which case you also have in the pool off-street parking, which was unused previously, because nobody wanted to park there because people could park for free on the street. But now you have prices and the off-street parking is available for 10 rupees. Now you are a shopkeeper in this area and you have to park your vehicle for 12 hours because you're going to come in the morning at 9 o'clock and you'll leave in the evening at 9. And your car is going to be parked for the entire duration. Where would you park? You can launch the question now, Wayne. And remember, this time you're parking for 12 hours. Now look at that. 98% of you said you will park in the off-street parking, which you would have otherwise not, had it been more expensive than on-street parking, which is often the case because your off-street parking oftentimes is more expensive because on-street parking is not even charged. Or even when it is charged, oftentimes on-street parking is cheaper than off-street parking. So the key to making sure that you manage parking is actually pricing, and pricing it appropriately. Where you have the highest demand, that's where you put the highest price. And if you want people to move to off-street parking, you want to make sure that your parking prices on street are more than off-street parking. So what are the key lessons here? Sorry, the first, make sure that prioritize cycle parking and IPT stands. And that's not something that we had gone through the exercise, but make sure that they need to get priority. Second, charge for duration, which is the longer you park, the more you charge. And this discourages long-term parking. So remember that that shopkeeper who had to park for 12 hours now parks in the off-street location because it's cheaper rather than on-street, which is premium. Third, charge high where the demand is high. So if the demand is very high, make sure that you're pricing it high. And how much should you charge? You should charge enough to keep at least 15% of the spots vacant, right? If even at 40 rupees per hour, all your slots are getting full, then it's time to increase the price to 50 rupees to see if maybe 15% of those parking there would choose now to park in the yellow or the green zone. Lastly, make sure that cycling parking is free. You want to prioritize that. And your goal is eventually that you want to shift parking from streets to off-street parking locations. And also another key point, you do not need to make off-street parking yourself as a city. You do not have to build MLCPs. If you start charging for parking on the street, the business of parking off-street will automatically take off. And we've seen this in multiple cities, including Indian cities. So do not think that you need to create parking off-street. MLCPs can be a private sector business. Why is that? Imagine government has no business in building parking. Much like how if you were to go and buy an air conditioner and then come out and say, government, I bought an air conditioner, you give me a free house to fix it in. Sounds bizarre, right? I can see a lot of you smiling or laughing. But we do the same thing when it comes to a car. That we buy a car and then say, government, give me free place to park my car. And I don't want just one place, I want 3 places. I want one at my home, I want one at my office, I want one at the mall or the park or wherever else it is. I want parking everywhere. Parking is a private need of a vehicle owner. You do not have to make it free for them. 2, unless you solve the problem of on-street parking management, you will not be able to get private off-street parking work. So key point here, start managing on-street parking and price it higher than off-street parking. That's when you will solve the business of parking. And by doing so, you have a win-win situation. Not only are you clearing up space on the street for cyclists, you're actually getting money to use to create cycling infrastructure. Fun, that's fun, right? The second key point that I'd like to go to is the business of intersections. How do we make intersections safe for cycling? So let's take an intersection, which is like mission impossible. You cannot go, as in you don't know as a cyclist how you would even manage to cross this intersection. As in, let alone a very capable cyclist also cannot cross this intersection, finds it very difficult to cross this intersection because of the complete chaos which is there on the street at the intersection. What are the issues? First, there are major conflict points and there's a lot of space like a football ground where you don't know how to maneuver and you might crash into anything anywhere. 2, there is conflict with left turning vehicles here at the bottom that you see at the point, where if a cyclist wants to go straight through and a motor vehicle wants to turn left, that's a big conflict point for a cyclist to resolve. 3, that whole area itself is difficult to cross because it's such a large area without any delineation. 4, there is inconsistent carriageway, which means that it narrows down, becomes a bottleneck, and then suddenly vehicles can speed. 5, you have issues where you have unused space on the street, which just immediately goes and becomes parking. Whether it's on the left side that you see, or in the middle of the street, right at the intersection where there is haphazard parking, which makes the intersection itself less than ideal. So all these issues make it very difficult for somebody to maneuver through this intersection. It's difficult for motorists, and it's almost impossible for cyclists. So what can you do? Let's start doing something about it. First, let's make intersections compact. The key to solving intersections is to make them smaller and more manageable. Second, make sure that the intersection actually is a right angle intersection as much as possible, because it actually slows down traffic and makes it more easy for cyclists and pedestrians to maneuver through the intersection. Then look at a consistent carriageway, make sure that the carriageway is even. If you have space only for 2 lanes, make sure that you have 2 even lanes across the entire length, rather than making it 3 lanes at some point, 4 lanes in somewhere else, and 2 lanes in another location, right? So consistent carriageway. And finally, now that you have created that carriageway, you can reclaim a lot of space which is presently wasted in a variety of ways and makes it dangerous into space for walking and cycling. And this is what cities have started already doing in India, like with this TU on the left side in Mumbai, or actual infrastructure in Pune and Chennai and many other cities. What can you do for further making it safe for cycling? Start looking at specific elements. Elements like make sure that you create, as in this case, it's possible to even create a cycle track. If not, then look at other elements like slowing traffic. It's about making sure that your left turns are small or they're not very large radii, and therefore it slows down traffic. Or you're looking at tabletop crossings, which are not only convenient for pedestrians, but also make it slower. It makes traffic slower so that cyclists can go safely. Or even creating certain streets, which you see on the north side, into a cycle-only street. So a variety of ways in which you can actually make a street safer for cycling, not just by cycle tracks, but by actually resolving the intersection itself. And a lot of this is actually possible using very temporary measures to test it out with the same lessons that I just now spoke about, which is make a compact intersection, make sure that your carriageway is even, and make sure that you are creating elements to slow traffic and not have high-speed traffic. So that's about intersections. Lastly, you all have asked questions about calming narrow streets. And there are a variety of means, and we've talked about this in the past as well. How do we calm narrow streets? You could do speed humps or tabletop crossings to slow them down. You could look at ideas like chicanes to make the traffic go zigzag and hence slow down. Or you could even create traffic rerouting so that you allow certain streets to be only cycling only, or at least limited access to cut through for a motor vehicle. So this is what you could do. And many other ideas which we would share with you as time goes by. Make sure that in all these cases, you have appropriate signages as well, so people know what's happening here. How do you go about developing the design? First, identify pain points. Some of you have already done that through the Handlebar survey. Make sure that you're identifying pain points during daytime, nighttime, at all times with a variety of stakeholders. Second, with your design teams, develop designs and check the feasibility of such designs on the site. So go on the site, see if it's possible to implement it or not, how you would implement it, revise the design if you need. Lastly, make sure that you're building support for these solutions with your community. They might be shopkeepers, they might be residents, they might be other stakeholders. Bring them on board so that they become your champions rather than them opposing once you start testing things out. So that's the process of developing the design solutions. We are happy to take any questions, but before we leave, I'd like to mention about the open streets on Gandhi Jayanti. As you can see in this picture, even Mahatma Gandhi was a cyclist, and he had a vision for a simpler city, a simpler country with simple tools like bicycles that would revolutionize how we live and live a sustainable future. So on 2nd October, we are inviting you all to create open streets for cycling, start a campaign for Cycles for Change. On 2nd of October, the man who made sure that India became independent, bring freedom for cycling for all of India. So with that, we've already shared with you guidelines and templates of how to go about it. You can use these. If you need more support, please reach out to us. Between now and the next workshop, what we're expecting you to do is start designing the pilot stretches, both the corridors as well as the neighborhood, conduct site visits to check the feasibility of these designs, refine the designs through expert review sessions, organize focus group discussions so that you build support with your community. And if you can start implementing it, go ahead and start testing these ideas. But do not forget, also keep building the momentum through the open streets starting from 2nd of October, but a variety of other ways, which you're already doing. What we will do between now and the next workshop is we will send you the presentation and the video of the presentation. You would get design solutions for implementing the details. So we are sending your way a design toolkit. We are giving a site analysis checklist as well, so that you can use that to make sure that you're addressing all the issues. A qualitative survey template that you can use, a guide for site documentation, and templates for outreach, as well as a guidance on street mix on how to create cross sections to try out various ideas. So this is about the presentation today. Happy to take any questions. Aditi, maybe if you have seen some questions from our audience today, please send them my way.
Sure, Shreya. Before that, shall we run the poll regarding the Open Streets campaign?
Yes, please, please. So the question is, are you planning an open streets campaign, or your city is planning an open streets campaign on the 2nd of October? And I hope many of you are. And just in case you're not, I would strongly urge to consider, it's great. 2/3 of you are planning an open streets campaign starting on 2nd of October. So great job. Looking forward to seeing how you do. And if you're not, I would strongly urge you to consider doing it starting from 2nd October. And if not, at least in the month of October. Aditi, any questions?
Yeah. Yes. So regarding the parking poll, I think a lot of the attendees found it interesting. So they wanted to know from the questions that you asked on which option someone would pick while visiting a particular site. Would it also depend on whether that visitor knows about the different parking alternatives that are available in that site? And that's how it would also drive demand. So what are your thoughts on this, Shreya?
Absolutely. So information is key, and therefore both on-street signage as well as potentially information on a web platform is very essential, so that people know what the alternatives are and then make those choices themselves. So in this case, you knew what the alternatives were, and that's why you were able to make a decision. So information through signage and other ways is key for you to be able to successfully make this transition.
Sure, Shreya. And so we've looked at parking as, as an obstruction that takes place in many of our roads. But people are also asking, like Suraj Vishwakarma, for instance, how can a city deal with hawkers and vendors? And, what can we do to regulate that?
Hawkers, again, the question is very similar in nature. You need to have a clear policy about how you would address it, and to start implementing it. So while street vending may be quite an important issue because they also provide eyes on the street, they make streets safer, but sometimes they can also overwhelm the street and make it difficult for cyclists and pedestrians and even other travelers, their mobility difficult. And therefore you need to streamline it You need to have clear demarcated spaces. In some cities in India, as well as elsewhere, they've created a system of cooperatives which are self-governing in nature. So that's another way in which you can take it forward. But the principal point is you need to demarcate and you need to have some systems of management and enforcement. And without that, street vending can become a big pain.
Sure, Shreya. And so a couple of questions on the scale-up plan. And Arun from Hyderabad is asking, how many kilometers of road network have to be considered during the scale-up plan? There's also another question asking if the corridor length by another user called Uma, if the corridor length has to be restricted to 10 kilometers.
So there are no restrictions. You can choose whatever you want. What we've said as far as the pilot is concerned is that the corridor should be at least 5 kilometers in length and the neighborhood should be at least 3 square kilometers in area. But otherwise, the sky is the limit. And I would urge all of you to consider having a scale-up plan which makes every inch of the city cycling friendly. So choose how you can make it happen. They could be through design measures, but also remember that there are also policy measures, as well as management measures and communications to make this happen. So it's not just about design, it's also about building support, and it's also about managing a variety of other things, such as parking, vending. So the sky's the limit, go ahead and do the best that you can. And the more and the better your plans are, the higher the chances that you would win this challenge.
Sure, Shreya. Sure. Thank you. And yeah, I think we come to the end of the session. So
Sure.
we will just close with a poll asking for their feedback
Thanks
for the
a lot.
entire session.
Look forward to your feedback. Yeah, please launch the poll on the session.
Thank you everyone for your feedback. Thank you for attending the workshop, Mr. Rahul Kapoor, all of the panelists, everyone watching through YouTube as well. We will send across all the resources shortly, and we look forward to having you with us for the next workshop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.